Everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I have a dupe video for y'all. I found a dupe for the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. But before I go any further with this video, I want y'all to look in my eyes and leave a comment down below. Pause this video, leave a comment down below on which side you think is the Modern Renaissance and which side you think is the new Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air. So pause the video, leave a comment down below, and then click play and let's get on to the video. So when I immediately saw that this was releasing, I was so surprised. Like, I was so shocked because the second that I saw it, the second that I looked at it, I was like, Modern Renaissance, that's it. And I went to grab my Modern Renaissance palette, and sure enough, they are so similar in tones. It is just uncanny. You will see in this tutorial how they apply, how they blend, the comparison of the shadows, the blendability, the quality. Little spoiler alert, I really love how this look came out. I love Wet n Wild. I think is one of the best drugstore brands. So before I get into the tutorial, I'm going to show y'all swatches comparing the shadow side by side from the two palettes so you can see the similarities between them. Now, there are not going to be exact, exact because obviously these shadows are different, but they come so close to each other, which y'all will see. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and give this video a thumbs up if you like these kinds of videos. I'm so into like finding dupes now. Now I'm going to like all my other high-end palettes, like, man, which dupe can I find for that? Which dupe can I find for that? So I'm definitely on the lookout. I believe I found a dupe for the Tartiste Pro palette. So let me know if y'all want to see that dupe. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get into the swatches, and then we will get into the makeup look. Alright, so I angled my camera differently just so I can get a larger scale instead of just using my hand. This is really small. I just want to show y'all side by side. So going into the Modern Renaissance, I'm going to take the shade Raw Sienna. That's Raw Sienna. And then going into the Wet n Wild shade, I'm going to take this shade right here, which they're not really named in the back of the palette, but they do have numbers, and this is number 10. So side by side, this is the number 10 shade. Okay, so this is gonna take a long time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and swatch them out on my arm, and then I will be back to share with y'all which is which. Here's some swatches. So again, this is Raw Sienna, and the number from the Wet n Wild palette that goes with this one is number 10. This right here, this one right here is Red Ochre. This is the Wet n Wild one. This one is Love Letter from the Anastasia palette. This is Wet n Wild. This one is Realgar from the Renaissance. This is Wet n Wild. This one is Warm Taupe from the Renaissance palette. This is Wet n Wild. This is Bone Fresco from Renaissance, and this is Wet n Wild. So finishing up the swatches, this is Tempera from the Renaissance palette. This is Wet n Wild. This is Renaissance palette, the Primavera shade. This is Wet n Wild. This is Antique Bronze from Renaissance. This is Wet n Wild. This one is Cypress Umber, and this one is Wet n Wild. As you can tell, these two are a little bit different. This one is more of a coppery undertone, but they still are fairly comparable. And this one as well, this one's more of a golden shimmer, as well as this one is gold, but it has more of that champagne undertone, but they still are very similar nonetheless. There are some shades in the Renaissance palette that are not in the Wet n Wild palette, like there is not a dupe for the Golden Ochre one. There's also not a dupe for the Vermeer shade, and also there is not one for the Venetian Red. So those are the only three, and the Burnt Orange. So 10 of the 14 shades from the Renaissance palette are comparable to each and every shade from the Wet n Wild palette. So now that y'all have seen swatches, let's go ahead and get on into the tutorial. Alright everyone, so I'm starting out with a bare face and I just have tape along my eyelids and I'm just going to prime my eyelids per usual using my liquid camouflage concealer from Catrice Cosmetics, and this is in the shade Light Natural. And I just go ahead and blend that out with my Maybelline Beauty Sponge. So the two palettes that we're going to be going into today are the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette and this new Wet n Wild palette. This is in the shade Rosé in the Air. And when you compare the two side by side, they are almost identical. So on this side of my face, I'm going to be using the Modern Renaissance, and on this side of my face, I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild. And just because I don't have any type of like color switch to dip my brush into, I use the e.l.f. Daily Brush Cleaner just to wipe my brushes off in between uses, because I want to use the same brush on both sides. Just obviously I'm just gonna wipe it out. I have a towel here and then I just spray the brush with this, wipe it out, and then it's completely clean and I can dip into a new shade. So for the Modern Renaissance side, I'm going to be going into the shade Tempera, and I'm just going to set my lid with this shade. And then from the Wet n Wild palette, I'm going to take the shade right here and set my eyelid. So for the Modern Renaissance side, I'm going to go into Raw Sienna and apply that into my crease. From the Wet n Wild side, I'm going to go ahead and take the shade right here and pop that into my crease. Alright, I just brought you in a little closer so you could see what I'm doing much better, but you can tell that both of the transition areas on each of the eyes look so similar. So next, from the Modern Renaissance palette, I'm going to take the shade Real Gar and just pop that basically in the same area that we put down the first transition shade. And then from the Wet n Wild palette, I'm going to take the shade right here and pop that, like I said, just in the same area that we put down the first transition shade. Okay, so again, after laying down those shades, you can tell that they are almost identical. So then to go into the next shade right here called Red Ochre, I'm gonna be packing this all over the lid on the Anastasia side. And I'm gonna go in to the shade right here and put that on the Wet n Wild side. And then on both sides, I am just gonna take a clean blending brush and just blend out those edges. And I am gonna wipe the brush in between blending. There's no product on this brush, it's just to blend out any harsh lines. And then I'm gonna go back into the first crease brush that we took and take some more of Raw Sienna on the Modern Renaissance side and just kind of define the crease a little bit more because I kind of got lost with the blending. Then on the Wet n Wild side, I'm gonna take this shade and again just define the crease a little more because of all the blending. Just want to make sure that everything stands out and there's no harsh lines, everything's nice and blended. On the Modern Renaissance side, I'm just going to take the shade Cypress Umber and deepen up the outer V of the eye. And then for the Wet n Wild side, I'm going to take this brown shade right here and deepen up the outer V of the eyelid. On the Modern Renaissance side, I'm going to take the shade Tempera and just highlight my brow bone with that. And I will be taking this shade right here and highlighting my brow bone. So these are the eyes so far. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the tape, apply the rest of my face makeup, and then I will be back to finish up the lower lash line and we will wrap up this dupe video. So finishing up the rest of the face, I'm gonna go into the Modern Renaissance and take the shade Raw Sienna and just run that along my lower lash line. And on the Wet n Wild side, I'm going to take the shade right here and do the same thing. Then I'm going to take the shade Red Ochre and run that along my lower lash line as well. For the Wet n Wild side, I'm going to take the shade right here and do the same thing. For the Modern Renaissance side, I'm going to go into Cypress Umber and put that really close to my lower lash line. For the Wet n Wild side, taking the brown shade in here and putting that close to my lower lash line as well. For the inner corner, for the Modern Renaissance side, I'm going to take the shade Primavera and pop that into my inner corner. For the Wet n Wild side, I'm going to take the shade right here and pop that into the inner corner. And I'm going to take a little bit of that shade on the Wet n Wild side and just put that in the center of my brow bone. And I'm going to take the Primavera shade and do the same thing on the Renaissance side. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and apply mascara and lipstick, and then we'll be back to finish up this video. Alright everyone, this is the completed look, and here are the eyes up close. This is the Wet n Wild side, and this is the Modern Renaissance side. I am just blown away by this dupe. When I saw that this palette was releasing, I immediately went and grabbed my Modern Renaissance palette because they are so identical, like I can't even. So definitely, for sure, in my opinion, this Wet n Wild palette in Rosé in the Air is a great dupe for the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. If you have been eyeing this palette, but you say to yourself, man, I don't want to fork out the $42, but you really like the tones, you really like the shades that are in here, I definitely recommend picking up this Wet n Wild one. I'm just so blown away. I know yesterday I showed my husband the picture that I posted on my Instagram, kind of giving a little teaser about this video. And I told him, I said, one side is a $5 palette, one side is a $42 palette. Can you guess which is which? And he was like, man, no. And I mean, it's amazing. If I was out, you wouldn't be able to tell that I was wearing two different palettes on my eyes. So this is such a great find, and I'm so happy that I could bring this video to y'all, because I know a lot of times we're all banking on a budget and, you know, we really want that good quality makeup palette, but it's just too much money at the moment. So to have something like this that's only $5 and it's gonna give you the exact same look. I mean, I know the Modern Renaissance palette has been out for a while, but you know, it's still going off the shelves, it's still being purchased, so it's still a very popular palette. It's one of their best in my opinion, and if, like I said, y'all are banking on a budget, then I really do think that the Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air palette is a great dupe for that one. Alright everyone, that wraps up this video. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already. God bless y'all today and always, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!